Hi, everybody. This is Kendell Lenice, Lady Motivator here, and I'm so excited about this virtual experience. Typically, I will do things recorded or on YouTube or my podcast, Shine with Kendell Lenice. I'm all over social media. Please follow me at k.lenice on IG and on Facebook, Kendell Lenice, and also my YouTube page, Kendell Lenice. This is where you will see this exciting interview. I'm so excited to have Dr. April L. Lisbon. She is let me make sure I get it right because, we got to get the titles right. So she is an autism coach and strategist as well as an empowerment speaker. She is a mother of 3 and one of her children is on the autism spectrum. I don't know if you know, but this is April, and this is April, but this is April. We are in the month of April, and that is National Autism Awareness Month. Thank you so much for joining me, April.
Thank you so much, Kendall, for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on this month. For those of you that listen to my podcast, Shine with Kendell Lenice, you will know that April was a guest on there. And we got into an interesting conversation. We got into a very educated conversation. And Dr. April, as I call her affectionately, shared a lot of her wisdom, not only a wisdom as a parent, but a wisdom as a coach and autism strategist. So let's start right there, Dr. April. What is an autism strategist?
Absolutely. So for me, I will be honest with you, I've actually started pivoting in my business after just watching my own child go throughout his educational careers. And so for me, an autism strategist is someone who basically creates and crafts plans, more so like social skills plans for individuals on the autism spectrum who are about to embark on their new journeys of life, whether it be at the collegiate level, whether it be on the job within the workforce, but really coming up with strategies that best support their unique learning styles and helps them to be more successful in their overall endeavors. So it's almost like I'm like their advocate, their resource, their advocate person to, bounce ideas off of and say, hey, do you think this would work for me? If this doesn't work for me, how do you think I can best navigate this process based on who I am in this world around me?
I love that. So it's almost a question of what came first, the chicken or the egg. Were you an autism strategist before you discovered your son was on the spectrum? Or did you?
No. Prior to that, I'm still a full-time working school psychologist. And so autism and anything related to the autism realm, even after my son was diagnosed, I didn't want anything to do with it. And a lot of that came because of my exposure and my experience working in education. And I saw the trauma that a lot of families and the children went through, and I didn't want any part of it. For me, working the regular school day, the school hours was enough for me to deal with the trauma and then not to have to feel it or experience it at home. I really did not branch off into becoming a strategist until my son recently basically told me, I don't want your help. And I took offense to that. I was like, first of all, you don't know me like that. But second of all, I realized it was his way of saying, I want my independence. I want, to find out who I am in this space that you call my world, and how can I be successful at that? And so once I saw my son basically say, Mom, I want you to hold my hand, but don't hold it to the point where you're like dragging me to my next point. That's when I realized that I needed to create strategies and tips and tools to help him navigate his high school experience. And as I thought through that process, I'm like, wait a minute, you're going to become a young adult soon. You're part of that Gen Z generation. And I was like, autism just doesn't end as soon as the IEP process is over in school. It continues. It's a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong process. So for me, that's when I finally took ownership of being an autism strategist, because of my son basically telling me, Mom, leave me alone. Let me do this on my own. And I was in my feelings.
Wow, right. Understandably so. But isn't that something? Your son, who is a gift,
Yes.
gave you a gift
Yes.
to help other people. I think that's so important, because sometimes we have our paths laid out as people. We think this is what we're going to do. This is what our strong suit is. And then something happens in our lives to kind of take that in a different direction and detours us in a positive way. But I do understand that about independence. And for those people who may be just hearing about autism for the first time, or really getting to know what autism is, can you talk about that? And can you talk about why you think it's important for your son to have the independence that he was requesting from you in that way, in that manner?
Absolutely. So autism spectrum disorder is a neurological disorder that impacts primarily social communication. And so for many individuals who are on the autism not even struggle, but on the autism spectrum, they basically struggle with verbal communication and nonverbal communication, meaning that they struggle with understanding social norms. They may have difficulties processing social cues, which then makes it more challenging for them to comprehend and ask questions that will help them to be successful within, whether it's in the school environment, within the home environment, or in the workplace. For a lot of individuals who are on the spectrum, they suffer with what we may call sensory processing issues. So things like sound and touch and taste and just even textures like clothing can create what we call triggers within them. Some of these triggers can be as simple as a crying meltdown, and then others of them can be very physical. The physical aggression can be towards someone else, or it can be turned inwardly. So for many people on the autism spectrum, where they really struggle with the most is in that social reciprocity, that give and take. Some people would coin them as being very naive, from the vantage point that they are very literal in their thinking. There is no gray. It's either black or white. It's either yes or no. There's no in between. And so sometimes their truthfulness, as I call it, or some people as being rude, but I will tell you, autistic individuals have a very keen sense of people who are telling the truth versus people who are telling a lie, and they will let you know if you're lying. And for us who aren't on the spectrum, we're like, yeah, I didn't want you to tell people my business. I mean, it's quiet. And they're like, no, but you didn't follow the rule. That's a lie. And that can get them into some trouble, you know.
Yeah.
Some of that trouble can include potential bullying, not only at school, but also in the workplace, as well as they, you know, they'll have difficulties. Some of them have difficulties, you know, with retaining friendships. So it's like I said, it's a neurobiological disorder that impacts primarily the overall social communication domains, verbal and nonverbal skills, but then it also impacts sensory issues. It can impact behavioral difficulties. For some people who I'm pivoting towards working with, you know, it even has caused some of them to actually have to stay home with family members because they struggle with financial independence. So.
Wow. And I know a lot of people hear about autism, they, you know, or what autism is, they've heard about it. Somebody that they know that knows somebody else might struggle with an autistic child. And I say struggle just because they're unaware on how to deal or how to strategize as you do. So I really think that is a gift. And you having your other background, and is it psychology?
Yes.
So having that background, how has that helped you, having a background in psychology? How has that helped you be a better autism strategist and coach?
You know what? I think it helps people outside of my home than my own son. And what I mean by that is it's one of those things where I can take things that I've learned from the educational setting, and I can apply them or upgrade them to fit a young adult working in the work environment. Because the reality is the disability is still there. It's not going anywhere. The only thing that has shifted is the learning environment, which is from school to the workplace, for example. So I'm able to take some of the interventions that I would typically do with high schoolers or even some of my middle schoolers, because the process is still the same, and upgrade it to benefit young adults. But as far as at home, some of those things just don't work. And I know it's because I'm mom And, you know, my son, he has a lot of my personality. And so even if he wasn't autistic, being that he has my personality and he's in your face and he's very, I won't call it cutthroat, but, you know, he's able to call a spade a spade. It makes it very difficult for me to apply what has been successful at the school level at home. But what I will say is this, is that, you know, all of the interventions that I'm working through, because I'm really shifting even some of that stuff, really has been a blessing, you know, working as a school psychologist for the last 20 years, because I've seen the evolution of, you know, not only autistic individuals, but other people with other neurodiversities, and how that, you know, it transcends from preschool to elementary to middle school to high school, and eventually out into the work world. And like I said, the only thing that changes with them is their chronological age and some maturity that's expected with anyone as they grow, but a lot of the same difficulties when it comes to the communication skills, when it comes to working in group, when it comes to the difficulties with shifting routines and finding balance. All of those are very consistent with what I see within the educational setting, as I do with young adults in the workforce.
Now, you said neurodiversity.
Yes.
I've never heard that before. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit more? Because I've never heard of that.
Yes, so that's really just brain path and the different types of brain delays, as I call it. So other neurodiversities can be individuals who are ADHD. They can be individuals with mental illness, like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, anxiety issues, depression, anything where I hate to use the word alteration in the brainwave, because it makes people think, oh my gosh, there's something abnormally wrong with that person. Well, guess what? We all have something that's abnormally wrong with us. No one is perfect, but it's just the way how their brains are just new, how their brains are wired. And it's just different compared to what we call typical individuals. So that's where they talk about the neurodiversity or neurodiverse learners.
I think sometimes, often, that is reversed. I think something's wrong with us and everything is right with them.
Oh, yes.
Because sometimes, I mean, I hate the word, I won't say hate. I strongly dislike the word normal, because what is that? Is that to isolate someone who may not be quote unquote normal? Is it to isolate those that may think that they're normal, but they're not? Like, who is normal? And where did that normalcy come from? Because like you said, we're not perfect. We all have struggles and issues and problems and differences and learning differences as well. When we even go to the styles of learning, those are different, where somebody might learn, you know, verbally or audibly, or somebody might learn as a visual learner, and then someone else. So it's just, somebody might have dyslexia, somebody might have, you know what I mean? So when you're dealing with an autistic child who becomes an adult, how do you explain, or when do you think it's a good time to explain to that child or young adult that they have autism? How do you explain that to the child, or should you?
Yeah, you know what? That I always defer to parents. Now, there are some parents who are very willing to share with their child that they're autistic, and here's the reason behind the why, as to, you know, why they may be struggling with sensory issues or behavioral issues. I will tell you once again, because of my experiences working in education, I actually did not want to let my son know that he was autistic, because I didn't want people to think of him differently or think of him less, you know, because he's an extremely bright young man. But as I said before, for him, he struggles within that social communication component. So I did not want people to identify him as being different. So for me personally, for our household, I did not tell him until he was 10 that he was on the autism spectrum. But by that time, he had been exhibiting some significant behavioral issues, and he needed to know why. And so as a mom, I realized that I couldn't hide it from him anymore. But I think the problem with waiting so late, and this is just specific to our household, was that when I told him what it was, he was like, that's not me. And so because of my own fears, my son then denied who he was as an individual. And so what helped us through the process is that I realized that with all my 20 years in experience as a school psychologist, I couldn't teach him what it meant to be autistic because that's not my life or my lifestyle. So I actually
Mm-hmm.
a mentor for him who is just like him, what they used to call Asperger's disorder. So his mentor is on the spectrum as well. And just watching the two of them together on Zoom or on telephone calls, it's like, oh my gosh, he's just an older version of my son. But in just watching the process and watching the nuances, I realized that even as a young adult, because his mentor is a millennial, they go through the exact same things. They both struggle with eye contact. I thought it was just my son, but watching
Wow.
them, both of them struggling, I'm like, oh my gosh, son, that's your normal. Just trying to think through the words in the next step. I'm like, oh my gosh, son, this is your normal. Even with this organization and having to write a list down. And I'm just like, because I'm anal retentive, I'm like, you have to get everything done. Even his mentor is like, I too have to have a checklist in order to make meaning of what I'm doing. Otherwise, I'll forget about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. It was almost like bells and whistles and everything went off of my head. But I realized for us in our family, my son had to see someone like him in order to finally believe that, yes, this is who I am, and I'm proud of who I am.
Wow, that's amazing. And what you're talking about, just even, it's almost as if it's mentorship in a sense, it's just really, and not so much, like he's coaching him or trying to tell him how to be, that word again, normal, but it's just really showing him how he's living, and your son can relate to him in a way that you could never relate to him. Exactly. They have almost like a secret language and a secret code.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But as you know, I've talked to you on my podcast about this. My husband's son, my stepson, who is in his early 20s, he's autistic. Mm-hmm. And I remember in one of the reasons I asked you, when do you tell the child they're autistic? How do you tell it? What kind of words do you use so they can understand? At first, I don't think he told his child that he was autistic. And I get that from a man's point of view, and that's your son, and you don't want them to be limited in any kind of way. So you refrain from telling them and try to just navigate through life, there's that word again, as a normal person. And I think sometimes a parent sees their child differently than other people see. They might say, okay, well, they're low on the spectrum, or they're high on the spectrum. And then someone else coming in, the outside looking in, might say, no, that there's clearly something wrong. So what, outside even of my husband, and even you having an autistic child, what would you tell someone that just finds out that their child is autistic? I remember when Holly Robinson Pete and Rodney Pete, and you know the story, when they first discovered their son was, Rodney Jr., RJ, was autistic. They were in denial. Rodney Pete didn't want to believe it. It almost caused a divorce in that Pete household, because Holly was on there, well, we got to get to it. We got to move fast. We got to get, we have the resources, thank you, God, to even get our child some help. What would you tell a couple that just got married, or they're married, they're together, and they discover that they have an autistic child? What would you tell that parent?
Absolutely. The first thing that I would tell them is that it's not a death sentence.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, as soon as they hear the word autism, it's like every hope and dream that you may have ever had for your child seems to just like go into the wind. And so what I would encourage people is that autism is not a death sentence.
Yeah.
It's growth. Your child can go through this process, regardless if your child is verbal or nonverbal. There is growth in the process. Will it take your child longer than someone else's child? Absolutely. But as I said before, we all have delays in our growth process, and your autistic child is no different. The second thing is cry. And that was one of the things that I denied myself. I would not cry because I felt like I had to be tough. I had to toughen it out, in order to be that support for my son. And I realized that I was denying my own pain of this process of, this is my baby. This is my firstborn, you know? And so when I finally allowed myself to grieve about having an autistic child, that's when I found the strength inside of me to say, okay, now that I've gotten through this part of the process, you know, what are you going to do next, April? You know, are you going to continue to sit in the tears, or are you going to be your child's best advocate? And so I made a conscious decision to daily become my child's best advocate. And so that's the next thing, you know, understand that you are your child's best advocate. You know your child better than anyone else. And if you have questions, ask the questions, seek the answers, and get the resources that's necessary for you and your child to be successful within your household, at school, at church, wherever it is. Seek out those resources. And the final thing that I would tell people, and this is, you know, is going to be very difficult. Sometimes you're going to have to shut off some family and friends, you know, until you guys can get through the process. Because, you know, some people will be like, well, he's not autistic, he's just a little bit different. Or, you know, those
or
people,
like in the community, he's slow.
Yes.
I can't stand that. But so he's just a little slow. He'll catch up.
Exactly. You got it, you know, and sometimes you just have to shut the noise out, shut the people out, because in the long run, when those doors are closed, those people aren't going to be there to support you. It's just going to be you, your spouse, your boyfriend, and your child, or your children if you have multiple children on the spectrum. So sometimes you have to close the door out on people in order to protect your sanity and to help yourself and your child heal through this process, because that's the only way you're going to be able to grow.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. That's excellent. And you just made me think of something that I don't know if I ever gave too much thought to. If you have multiple children on the spectrum, I can only imagine, because from what I'm told by you and other folks, I don't want to say dealing with a child with experiencing a child or raising a child with autism, it's very difficult at times. It's very pull your hair out, trying to discover, trying to get, you know, and you mentioned social cues earlier, and how autistic children don't really understand necessarily what a social cue is. Can we talk about that for a moment?
Absolutely. So that's just your nonverbals, you know, your body language. That's the best way I can put it. It's all about your body language. So if you're saying that you're in pain, but you're smiling, then the autistic person is like, well, if you're really hurting, why don't you look like you're hurt? But they don't understand that you're smiling through the pain. You know, they don't get that. It's like, that makes no sense. It's like, if you are hurt, I should see tears, because that shows me the pain that's inside of you. And to smile about it, it's almost like, the best way I can describe it is how my son was telling me about it. It's almost like you're lying to yourself. And I never thought about it that way.
Wow.
You know? But that's the way how he sees it. He sees when your body language is doing the opposite of what you're saying, you're lying to yourself. And I was like, I saw it as me trying to protect myself. What you talking about me lying to myself? But that's how he interprets it. And so that's why we always talking about, you know, when you're exhibiting these body language, make sure they align with your facial expressions. Make sure that they align, you know, with the words that are coming out of your mouth, because for the autistic person, they are looking at all parts of you. You know, some people just focus in on one part. And so if this one part is saying one thing and the rest of your body is going someplace else, it creates ambiguity. It creates confusion in them, you know? And so those social cues is how they sense and make meaning of the world. You know, even such things as idioms that we like to use, like hit the road, Jack. You know, that means for those of us who are not on the spectrum, we know that means you need to hurry up and get out of here. For them, it's like, well,
like it's raining cats and dogs.
Exactly.
It's like raining cats and dogs. They're like, there's no cats and dogs.
Exactly. And if it does start to rain, what's going to happen to the cats and the dogs? Are they going to get hurt? And you know, it's just raining real hard. That doesn't make any sense, you know? And so just little things like that can be a challenge to them. And so even for me as a mom, you know, one of the things that we're really working on, and this is his favorite thing now that he's learned what sarcasm is, he will tell you, oh my gosh, Mom, I was just sarcastic. And I'm just like, dude, yes, you're sarcastic. You know, but you know, so it's exciting that he's learning to be sarcastic, But then I have to remind him, but son, you're not supposed to tell people that you're being sarcastic. You know, that goes back to that truth serum. That's with autistic individuals. So we're learning.
But that's so funny. That's so funny. But I'm just thinking about that and saying that, Mom, guess what? I'm being sarcastic. But that shows you that he's still learning, even though yes. that's so cute. You're not supposed to tell somebody you're being sarcastic. They're just supposed to know.
Exactly.
That is so funny, but it shows you that he's learning.
Yes.
And that he hears you,
yes.
and that he's able to decipher. That's saying a lot.
Yes, and that's
saying a lot.
That's something we've been working
with your
on
son,
for years.
Wow. And how old is he now?
He's 14 now. Yes. So the sarcasm component really didn't start until maybe November of 2019. So this is something brand new for us, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and him also being able to, and he'll ask you, you know, Mom, or he'll ask his brother, are you trying to be sarcastic right now? But it's taken us time to get to that part of the process, because what I teach him is, you look at my body position and look at the words that I'm saying to see if I'm trying to be sarcastic, you know. So something that we're training a lot on doing. And so now he's gotten into the rhythm of it. It's like, I think you're trying to be sarcastic. Is that what you're trying to do? I'll give him a high five and say, yes, that was a sarcastic moment. And so when he has the opportunity to do it, you know, he really feels good about it. Like, oh my God, just like, I like the people, but I'm like, but remember, you're not supposed to say you're being sarcastic though. So yeah.
Wow, that's so awesome though, that it's telling you that you're doing it right, Dr. April. You know, because it's different when you can help other people with their challenges, and you can teach someone who has an autistic child about autism, and talking about social cues, and when you should allow them to start being independent and strategize something for their lives. But it's beautiful. It's even just beautiful to see that you're able to do that with your son, because that's when you know that you're really successful and what you're doing is really working. Would you agree?
I agree with you. I really, really do. So it's one of those growth parts of the journey.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty awesome. So when you think about, as we got about 10 minutes left. So when you think about your child and the moment you got the diagnosis, and when you talk to other parents and when they get their diagnosis, what is the temperature in the room at that point? And we talked a little bit about Holly Robinson Peete and Rodney Peete earlier, but what is that like? And I know you touched on it a little bit, but what is that like?
You know what? I think at that moment in time, every piece of guilt and wrongdoing that you may have done to anyone ever in your life come back to haunt you.
You think it's karma?
Yeah, really, you do. So it's almost like, maybe if I hadn't cussed that person out or yelled at that person or said all these things, this would have never been, you know, my story.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 100, I would say, you know, to initially hear the conversation, because my son really was never diagnosed until we got into elementary school. But the first time I heard the conversation, he was 2.5. And I will tell you, it was like my heart sunk. Like, first of all, I felt guilty, because here I am, a school psychologist working with preschoolers, kids, you know, before I even had my child. You know, autism wasn't something that was new to me. So I felt like if anyone should have known that their child was autistic, it would have been me, you know. For my son, he didn't have a lot of the classic hallmarks that, you know, when I go through the check off boxes with my family and parents, that was not him, you know. The only thing he had was sensory issues. But when I talked to other people, they were like, well, you know, sometimes some kids who have significant communication delays, they will have some sensory processing issues. So I always related it to the communication component. And so when I first heard those words, I'm telling you, everything I ever did wrong in my past, I felt like it was karma, you know. But in that process, I'm thankful that I grew up and realized that it has nothing to do with karma. Because if it did, I should not have anybody's children. You know, mean, really, I just realized the first time you hear it, it hurts because once again, you know, you have all these dreams and these visions for your child, and that word, the stigma, and it goes back to something that his mentor says, the stigma that we have created worldwide when it comes to the word autism makes autism a dirty word. You know, it makes it so unclean that no one wants to be around you. And I think that's the wrong take that we've had for so many years in trying to, whether it's trying to build awareness, acceptance, or inclusion, until we take the stain out of the word autism and what it's all about. For a lot of people, it's still going to be that dirty little word. And so parents are always going to feel like, you know, from time to time that they have to go into hiding because no one wants to be around the autistic kid or the autistic family, you know. And so until you actually find people who are like you and who are vocal like I am, you know, it took me to this point of vocal and align yourself with vocal people, then you'll be hiding in the closet. You'll be crying by yourself because, you know, like I said, worldwide, and it's just not to the US, we have made the word autism everybody's dirty little secret.
Yeah. And I think everybody thinks that, and they're not, excuse me, I just turned the camera around. Sorry about that. But I was trying to make sure I can see you clearly and the people can see you later. So I apologize for that. But you're absolutely right. And we have to stop saying it's a dirty little secret. We have to stop making it that way. We have to stop ostracizing children who become adults. We have to really just empower them and really get the information to the parents and really try to use the resources around us. Can you tell me some resources that are available for parents with autistic children?
Absolutely. So aside from your local school district, like all school districts have a parent resource center, so that's a great place to start. Any of the community service boards within your local areas, they have information about autism. Like I tell people, tread on the internet lightly when it comes to autism, because if you do enough Google searching, you will find yourself wrapped in a fetal position wondering, why in the world am I reading this stuff online? So the internet is a great resource, but like I tell parents, just be very mindful of the stuff that you see online, because everybody's story is not going to be your family's story. And so, but the internet is a good first starter. And for some people, there are local autism organizations within your local community. I would tell parents to align with your local organizations. I won't speak about the bigger ones, because I do have autism moms who do support those organizations that I do not support. But what I will say is, if you're looking for unity and just that close-knitness, it's always best to start with your local chapter. Every city that I know has a local autism chapter. Start there first, because you want to find people in your community who get it, who understand what you're going through. And then if you want to, you know, connect with some of the national organizations, you can also seek information out from them as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. April. I greatly appreciate you coming on with me, virtual style. I definitely want to have you back on my podcast. If possible, we can arrange something before this month is over, because I really think it's important to get the word out and really to help parents out there, and help parents, even if you don't have an autistic child, but your children are around them, or you have a family member that's autistic. I think that we need to break those chains of something's wrong with this child is just slow, this child is different, and really get to a point of understanding where we can hopefully all grow and learn from that particular child, because that child is going to be an adult one day. So, but before I let you go, let's just talk about that just briefly, what it's like for that transition to happen from that autistic child who now becomes an autistic adult.
Yes, preparation is key. And what I mean by that is, when your child is telling you, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, to let me go, let them go. And it's not like you're giving up on them. It's not like you are leaving them out to fend for themselves. But when your child is asking you for their independence, they're trying to advocate for who they are as an individual. And so the sooner you as a parent get out of your own fears and allow them to explore their independence, the better they will be able to be when it comes to them making the transition into adulthood. Because like I told my son, I said, I love you dearly. I said, but you're not going to be living in my house because you're junky, you know? But when I that, it's because I want to see him become independent. You know, would I love for him to be in the same city? Absolutely. Can he live down the street from me? Absolutely. But I want him to experience what it's like to be out on his own. No, you don't have to be perfect, but I'm going to teach you and I'm going to give you those necessary, you know, life skills to help you learn how to balance a checkbook, if we still have checkbooks as it gets older.
Right.
But learn how to pay bills, you know,
Right.
learn how to go grocery shopping. You know, these are things that I'm already teaching him how to do now.
Yeah.
That by the time he moves forward and, you know, gets out on his own, then this won't be something that's foreign to him. And so as he does, because he is going to become a young man, like I always tell people, you know, no one ever wants to talk about death and dying, but I know that I'm not going to always be here. So if I can set him up for success now and we practice it, as he continues to grow and to learn, and where he can finally ask those questions that may elude him, then by the time he's out there, you know, all of those questions would have been answered. And now he's not doing it mommy style, he's doing it his style based on who he is as a person.
Yeah. Yeah. But how do you know when they're ready?
You know what?
They might want to, but they might not be ready. And I'm thinking about this even with my stepson, but then I'm thinking about this for other children as well, because they might think that they're ready for independence. They might think that they're ready, but you're looking at how they're navigating through the life that you see them living. How do you know when to keep holding on just a little bit longer, or when to say, you know what, fly birdie, you can experience your independence?
You know, it's no different than any other parent who doesn't have an autistic child. You know, I think
because my kids aren't autistic and they ain't ready. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I'm like, Lord, I still got work to do. They're not ready.
Exactly. It's no different.
Right.
I think the only difference is when we choose not to allow our kids to be their own advocates and give them their own voices. And what I mean by that is that sometimes we as parents can keep that dirty little secret, and then our kids keep the dirty little secret of them being autistic. And rather than giving them their voice to advocate for themselves and to be proud of their, you know, that they are on the spectrum, you know, by us sheltering that, then I hate to use the word cripple them, but we then cripple their independence, you know. And so for me personally, and like I said, you know, I not every parent is like me. And I think a lot of it is because I see so much of this process working in schools, watching parents, you know, hold too tightly to their kids, that their kids are like, I just want to be able to breathe. And you're like, no, I'm breathing for you. I am your life supply. Kind of a thing that, you know, we actually stifle our children's voices. And so that's why I say for my own son, you know, I know there are going to be several times that he's going to have to come back home, but I want him to be able to explore what life is like on his own, because he deserves it. You know, he's earned it. You know, every time that he hits a major milestone in life, that's growth for him. And I don't want to be the cause, because of my own fear about the word autism, you know, that I then cripple him and not give him his voice. So, you know, when it comes to that question, it's a conversation that your child, and once again, and I'm talking about for those who can advocate for themselves. I'm not talking, you know, as a parent, if you have a child that's severely autistic, then you know that they're not going to be able to live on their own. So you as a parent have to decide, are you going to take care of that child for the rest of their life, or are you going to have to put them in a group home? That's a totally different conversation versus those who are more have more verbal communication skills, who are able to, you know, to do some of the independent work themselves. And just reminding your kids, even today, you know, you don't have to be perfect through the process. Ask questions, but just know you're not going to be living in my house. You can live across the street. I mean, directly across the street, 5 miles, you know, but I want to see you grow, you know, because you have actually earned it with everything that my son and every other autistic child has to fight through every single day. you know, whether it comes from family members, friends, you know, school, whatever, you deserve to have this voice of finding what it's about, you know, of you being able to be independent. You know, do I see full independence?
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah. You know, if he would learn how to manage his money, he'll be good to go. But I'm like, but he's only 14. You know, I'm not expecting you to know how to budget everything, but save some money sometime.
Right. Right. That, I mean, it's so awesome. And Dr. April, I don't know if I told you this before, but I think you're pretty awesome. I do. I see you not only on my shows, but I see you on Facebook. You know, you have grace, you have a sense of humor, you know, you have a humility, presence, a human aspect to you. And I say that to say, and I was trying to find the right words, because it's important to recognize that. And a lot of times people see doctor or people see strategist or coach, and they think that they're above everyone in a sense where they can't really relate and understand the regular folks' struggle, if you will. Yeah. So I love the fact that you share your story, and I love the fact that you're helping other parents strategize their way through autism. Much success to you. You know, I'm proud to know you. I'm here whenever you need me. And we got to do something together real soon.
Absolutely. Sounds good, Kendell.
And I love seeing you on the prayer call, on the prayer Facebook Live. I know what you mean. April. So, right, that made me smile. But thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Thank you for watching Dr. April and me, Kendell Lenice. I thank you so much for supporting everything that I do. Everybody out there, anytime that I need an interview or I need someone to come on and talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, or to really just whatever I need someone for, you know, Dr. April, you're one of them. I thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. I thank you, everyone out there, for watching and supporting all the things I do. I don't take it lightly, and I'm glad that I have that credibility. When I call, people answer, so I don't take that lightly also. But thank you so much, and enough about all of that. Thank you. I appreciate it. This is a different kind of vibe. I might like it a little bit, you know, I don't know. The jury is still out. But thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for listening. God bless. Thank you.